My name is Sarah Walker. I'm 34 years old and work as a licensed mental health counselor at a small community clinic just outside Seattle. For as long as I can remember, Colette Whitman has been my best friend. We met in first grade, shared every secret, every heartbreak, every milestone. So when she invited me to her baby shower that sunny spring morning, I felt nothing but happiness for her. Or at least, that's what I told myself. As I walked up her lavender-decorated driveway, balloons bobbing gently against the perfect blue sky, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Deep down, I think I already knew the truth. I stood frozen in Colette's living room, the lavender streamers fluttering with every breeze from the open windows. The whole place smelled like roses and sugar cookies, like a life that was too perfect to be real. Bennett's words echoed in my head, each syllable like a needle against my skin. She's not pregnant. I forced myself to keep smiling, to keep nodding, as guests showed off their gifts and gushed over baby names. But underneath my ribs, my heart pounded a single terrified beat. What if he's right? Colette floated around the room like a queen, one manicured hand always resting lightly on her belly, the other clutching her mimosa glass with careless elegance. Her eyes sparkled whenever someone congratulated her. They didn't see it, the tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth when she felt their gaze linger too long. But I did. I'd spent 20 years learning her micro-expressions, reading her like scripture. That twitch meant she was hiding something. Bennett moved like a shadow at my side. His hand brushed mine, fingers cold. Notice anything he whispered, like what I whispered back, desperate to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer, just shook his head, eyes scanning the guests again with clinical detachment. As a doctor, he'd seen mothers in every stage of pregnancy, and what he saw here was a lie. Colette led us up to the nursery. The walls were painted soft blush, crowned with a chandelier that scattered fractured rainbows across the ceiling. A forest mural covered one entire wall. Deer foxes, rabbits, frozen mid-run, forever innocent. But my gaze snagged on the crib. Brand new, still wrapped in plastic, mattress untouched. Tiny designer clothes hung neatly tagged still on, smelling of department store perfume rather than home. I swallowed against the rising nausea. This wasn't a room waiting for a child. It was a showroom, curated for an audience. Beside me, Bennett raised his phone and snapped a photo. He didn't bother to hide it. Colette noticed. Her eyes flicked to the camera and away so fast I almost missed it. Almost. She laughed lightly, tucking a loose curl behind her ear. "Isn't it beautiful?" she asked. "Beautiful." I echoed, my voice thin. We left early. On the drive home, Bennett's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. Neither of us spoke. The sun was too bright, mocking us with its warmth, as if it didn't know the world was splitting open under my feet. Finally, halfway down the highway, he said it again. "Sarah, she's not pregnant." "Stop it," I whispered. "Stop! When was the last time you actually touched her stomach?" The question was a blade between my ribs. My mind flipped through memories like an old flip book. The announcement dinner, the gender reveal, shopping trips. She hugged sideways, never pressing close. Always arms wrapped high, never low. Always posed, never relaxed. Always aware. Lots of pregnant women don't like their bellies touched, I said, my voice brittle as glass. "That's convenient," he replied softly. I felt something inside me cracking like ice underfoot. I thought of her mother's toast at the party. After so much silence, this baby is a blessing. Silence. Colette never mentioned fertility struggles, never admitted to weakness, and yet her eyes, when no one was watching, held a grief I never asked about. "Why would she lie?" I choked out. "I don't know." Bennett's voice was gentle, but I hated it then. Hated his certainty. Hated the pity, in his gaze, attention, money. Or maybe something darker. Darker. The word settled into my chest like tar. When we pulled into our driveway, Bennett cut the engine but didn't move. He turned to me, his eyes sad. "She's your friend," he said. "Whatever happens next is your choice." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. 20 years of memories looped behind my eyelids. Sleepovers whispered secrets. Blood-pricked thumbs pressed together in childish oaths of forever. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Colette, "Miss you. Already. Lunch Tuesday. So much to tell you, so much to tell me." I clutched my phone to my chest and wept silently. Into the darkness, the truth slicing through me like broken glass. Because in my soul, under every excuse and every rationalization, I already knew. She wasn't carrying a baby. She was carrying a lie. And soon, it would tear us both apart. I drove to the cabin at Lake Morrison in silence, the morning sun glaring off the windshield like an accusation. Each mile felt like a step deeper into the unknown. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. The last time I'd been here with Colette, we were 17 drunk on cheap vodka and dreams of futures that felt infinite. Today, the road felt like a plank I was walking off. Her SUV was parked under the sagging carport. The cabin stood silent, its windows black with morning shadow. I stepped out, gravel crunching under my boots, and for a moment I thought about turning back, pretending ignorance, letting the lie stand. But something deeper and colder pushed me forward. I knocked once. The door swung open as if she'd been standing there waiting. She wore white, a simple cotton dress that clung to her slight frame. No baby bump, just a flat stomach and hollow eyes rimmed red. For a moment we stared at each other. 20 years of friendship warred with the sharp terror in my chest. "You knew," she said softly. Not a question. A fact. I nodded. She turned away, moving inside without a word. I followed. The cabin smelled of damp wood and old memories. Dust motes swirled in shafts of light slicing through half-closed blinds. Colette sat on the worn leather couch, tucking her legs under her like a child. She didn't look at me as she spoke. I wasn't always lying, you know. My voice scraped against my throat when I asked, "Then when did you start?" Her shoulders rose and fell in a silent sigh. 8 weeks. Last year. Real pregnancy. Real loss. After that, I couldn't let it go. I wanted to reach for her, to take her hand. But something inside me recoiled. There was a stillness in her voice that wasn't grief. It was calculation. And this baby shower. These donations, I forced the words out. They tasted like poison. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were dry, empty. People pity you when you lose something, but they adore you when you're about to gain it. My stomach twisted. You manipulated them. You manipulated me. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I knew you'd understand." I whispered. My hands shook. "I don't understand any of this." Colette stood abruptly. She moved to a desk in the corner, pulled out a folder, and tossed it onto the coffee table. Checks, donation receipts, names I recognized from galas and charity dinners. "They believe in me," she said, her voice soft, but her words sharp as razors. "They believe in what I've built." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "What you've built is a house of cards, and it's going to fall." She tilted her head, studying me like I was something curious under glass. "Would you testify against me, Sarah?" I flinched at the ice in her tone. "I don't know." Her smile returned slow and deliberate. "Yes, you do. You've always known. That's why you're here." Something broke inside me then. I saw her clearly, for the first time. Not as my best friend. Not as my sister in everything but blood. But as a woman who would set the world on fire to keep herself warm. I loved you, I said, my voice cracking. I loved you like family. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her smile never wavered. And I loved being loved by you. But love isn't enough, is it? Outside, a breeze rattled the windows, making the silence inside feel heavier, colder. Then she said it, the words that burned themselves into my bones. If I go down, Sarah, I'm not going alone. The threat wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I felt its teeth sink into my spine. She turned away, gazing out the window at the still lake. Her voice was calm, almost tender. You should go now, before you become part of this mess. I walked out into the blinding daylight, every step feeling like it was pulling free from quicksand. As I reached my car, I looked back through the cabin window. She stood there, framed by shadows and morning light, her face a mask I could no longer read. Driving away, my pulse thundered in my ears. But beneath the terror, something colder bloomed in my chest. Because as much as I hated her in that moment, I knew she was right. If she fell, she would take everything, and everyone, down with her. And somewhere deep inside, in a place I didn't want to admit, existed a part of me wondered, what would I be willing to do to keep my own world from collapsing? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen as dawn broke, staring at Colette's journal spread before me. Each page was filled with her looping script words, bleeding with desperation and delusion. My miracle girl, one day you will be real enough to make them all regret doubting your mother. I pressed the cover to my chest, feeling its edges cut into my skin like penance. In the quiet, Bennett's voice echoed in my mind. You have to tell them, Sarah, before someone gets hurt. But he didn't understand. It wasn't just about the donations, the fraud, the manipulation. It was about her. About the girl I'd braided friendship bracelets with at summer camp. The girl who snuck out with me to kiss boys behind the baseball bleachers. The girl who clung to me after her parents' divorce like I was the only stable thing left in her life. How do you destroy someone you've spent your entire life trying to protect? But maybe I wasn't protecting her. Maybe I was just enabling her to sink deeper into her own darkness. I drove to the police station with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The fluorescent lights buzzed above as I laid the journal, the receipts, and my statement in front of the detective. He flipped through them in silence, his face carved from granite. Why now, he asked, looking up at me. I swallowed hard. Because if she can do this to strangers, what do you think she could do to me? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The news broke within hours. Local nonprofit director arrested for faking pregnancy to secure donations. Her mugshot spread across every feed, every channel, every group chat in town. The radiant woman in a blush pink dress cradling her fake belly transformed into a hollow-eyed criminal clutching a prison blanket. Some people called her mentally ill. Others called her a monster. I didn't know which was worse. They dissolved her foundation. Donors pressed charges. She accepted a plea deal, probation, restitution, community service, mandatory psychiatric treatment. But there was no sentence for what she stole from me. My certainty, my instincts, my faith that love was enough to save someone from themselves. Months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Her handwriting was shaky, looping across the page, with the desperation of someone clinging to the last threads of their sanity. Sarah. They tell me writing this is part of recovery, that I must acknowledge harm, take responsibility, express remorse. I don't know if this is real remorse or another performance. I don't know if I know the difference anymore. But I do know this. You saved me. Not the way a friend saves another gently, with love. but like a surgeon cuts out the rot before it spreads. You did what I couldn't do for myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. I just needed you to know you were the only one I couldn't fool completely. Colette. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my memory box alongside childhood photos, our friendship bracelets, and a single pale blue yarn thread from the shawl I'd lied about to enter her house that day. Sometimes I still dream of her. In my dreams, she's standing in that untouched nursery, humming a lullaby to an empty crib, smiling as if everything is exactly as it should be. I wake up choking on tears I don't know if I shed for her, or for the part of me that died with the truth. Because the truth is simple. Some people don't want your love. They want your belief. And when your belief feeds their darkness, you stop being their friend. You become their audience, their enabler, another willing participant in their carefully constructed performance. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Even if it destroys everything you thought was real. Even if it leaves you alone with nothing but the echo of your own blind devotion. Some lies are told for love, but others are told by people who loved the applause more than they ever loved you. As I sit here now, staring at her journal under the soft glow of my kitchen light, I realize there was never a baby. There was never going to be a baby. There was only Colette, and the endless, desperate hunger inside her that no one, not even me, could ever fill. 5 years later, I still think about her. I think about her in the small, unguarded moments when I'm waiting in line for coffee and catch a flicker of golden hair in the corner of my eye, or hear sudden laughter with that same bright crystalline note slicing through the mundane noise of the world. My chest clenches breath, hitching in my throat, my heart caught between beats. Colette. Her name is a wound that never fully scabbed over a taste of old blood and salt on my tongue, metallic and bitter. Sometimes I whisper it into the dark just to remind myself she was real. After everything fell apart after the final reveal, the headlines, the hushed pity of neighbors, the public's morbid fascination. I tried to build a life from the rubble she left behind. Bennett and I moved to a quieter town, one with tree-lined streets and sleepy sidewalks. I opened my own counseling practice. My business cards sit pristine in their little glass holder, each one a silent promise of hope and healing. On paper, everything looks mended. To the world, I am strong, whole, thriving. But wounds like hers don't just scar, they splinter, leaving fragments buried so deep inside you don't realize you're bleeding until the pain roars awake in the dead of night. Every baby shower invitation feels like acid in my stomach. Every pastel nursery I pass makes me think of that room in her house, that perfect, untouched room, walls painted in soft dreams, shelves lined with stuffed animals and tiny shoes no child would ever wear. A stage set for an audience who never realized they were just props in her endless, desperate performance. Sometimes on the nights when sleep is impossible and my thoughts gnaw at me like starving rats, I read her last letter again. The pages are wrinkled, watermarked by tears I thought I had already shed dry. You were the only one I couldn't fool completely. That line unravels me every time, as if it were meant to be a twisted confession or perhaps a final compliment. She was released after 18 months of treatment. No prison time. Just therapy sessions, community service, and a quiet disappearance into the fog of forgotten headlines. No one knows where she lives now. Her parents sold the cabin and vanished into the anonymity of retirement communities. Alaric remarried within a year. Wedding photos plastered across social media like a desperate rebranding. Her brother moved to Oregon, married a dentist, and never speaks of her again. But I know she's out there. I feel her in the stillness of my life like a cold draft seeping beneath a locked door. Some nights when winter storms howl against our windows and shadows stretch across the hardwood floors like dark fingers reaching for something unseen. I dream of her standing at the foot of my bed, watching, always watching with those impossibly pale blue eyes lit from within by something ancient and unknowable. I wake up choking on my own breath, clawing at the sheets, my body slick with sweat, and my mind thrumming with terror. Bennett's steady warmth beside me is the only anchor, the only proof that I haven't slipped back into her world. But even then, in those half-awake moments when the veil between nightmare and reality thins, I feel it, her presence curling around my fear like smoke. And in those dreams, she always smiles, a small secret smile, as if to say, "You thought this was over." And in that instant, lying there trapped between the nightmare and the dawn, I realized the cruelest truth of all. Some people never stop performing, some lies never stay buried, and some truths will haunt you for the rest of your life, the end or not. She asked me to meet her at the old family cabin by Lake Morrison. The drive out there felt like sinking backwards into time. As the car wound down that narrow gravel road, flanked by pines, memories crowded my chest until it hurt to breathe. Two little girls with tangled hair and sunburned shoulders, running barefoot across the dock, daring each other to jump into water so cold it took our breath away, whispering secrets under mosquito nets at midnight, promising each other weddings and babies and forever. But forever never looked like this. When I pulled up, the morning mist was just beginning to lift off the lake, revealing the glassy stillness of water untouched by breeze or boat. The air smelled of pine sap and damp wood, of rotting leaves and memory. And there she stood barefoot on the porch, in a simple white dress that hung loose on her frame. No makeup, no baby bump. Just Colette stripped bare of every layer of performance. "You knew," she said softly as I stepped out of the car, her voice carrying across the silent clearing like the echo of an old hymn. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My throat felt carved from stone. Inside the cabin felt colder than the world outside. Dust motes drifted through golden slivers of morning light, cutting in through warped window panes. She sat curled up on the old floral couch legs, tucked beneath her, hugging her elbows like a child waiting for punishment she already knew she deserved. I wasn't always lying. She began, her voice flat and distant, like she was narrating someone else's story. "A year ago, I really was pregnant, 8 weeks along. I even bought prenatal vitamins. I picked out names." Her eyes flickered to mine for just a moment, before dropping to the cracked floorboards. Then I lost it. A single tear slid down her cheek, carving a glistening path, but her eyes remained dry, dead, hollow. I told no one, not even you. I thought if I pretended it hadn't happened, it wouldn't hurt so much. Then came that fundraiser for my foundation. Maternal health. I was supposed to stand on stage and inspire hope and donations, but backstage, I just broke. I couldn't stand there as a failed mother. I couldn't breathe. Her voice cracked, then sharp and brittle, the sound of something precious splintering. Alaric found me. He told me, what if I didn't have to tell the truth yet? What if I just said I was pregnant again, just to get through that night? People would listen to me again, pity me, respect me. She laughed, a jagged, bitter sound that didn't touch her eyes. At first, it was only for that night, just to survive the speech. But then people started looking at me with those eyes, you know, the ones filled with awe and pity, like I was carrying something holy. And I couldn't give that up, being the center of their sympathy, their admiration, being special. Her words sank into me like stones, into a deep lake, each one dragging me further beneath the surface, choking me with all the memories I thought were real, Every gentle smile over decaf coffee, every hand resting protectively over a swelling belly that was never really there, every ultrasound photo she never showed. And I realized then, in that quiet room, that smelled of mildew and old pine with morning light streaming in like judgment. She didn't just lose her baby. She lost herself. Or maybe she never found herself to begin with. As I watched her sitting there, shoulders trembling under the thin cotton dress eyes, fixed on a spot on the floor that only she could see, a colder, sharper truth slid under my skin like a blade. Maybe she never really wanted the baby. Maybe she only ever wanted the love that came with it, the attention, the worship, the feeling that her existence meant something, simply because she was carrying another life within her. And in that moment, something inside me broke, because I finally saw her for who she truly was. Not the glowing mother-to-be, not the grieving woman who lost everything, but a lonely child, still desperate to be chosen, still willing to burn down the world around her for a single moment of being adored. And there in that silent cabin by Lake Morrison, I understood some emptiness can never be filled. Some love is nothing but hunger wearing a beautiful mask. And some people would rather be loved for a lie than live unloved in the truth. She stood up suddenly and walked to the desk by the window. Sunlight caught her hair, turning it almost silver. She pulled out a folder and dropped it onto the coffee table in front of me. Papers spilled out, donation receipts, emails, personal letters with trembling signatures. "Look," she said, her voice flat. "See what they gave." I picked up one letter. The handwriting was elegant, shaky with age. "Thank you for agreeing to name your daughter Edwina after my late husband. Knowing his name will live on brings me peace." My stomach twisted. "You promised to name your baby after her dead husband." She shrugged, eyes distant. It made her happy. I flipped through more papers. Each donation was tied to a name, a lost child, a stillborn granddaughter, a sister who died in childbirth. My hands trembled. You targeted them. You used their grief. She turned her gaze to me then, and for the first time that morning I saw something flicker in her eyes, something sharp and hollow. They wanted to believe in something good. I gave them that. My foundation does real work, Sarah. The mobile clinics, the prenatal programs, they're real. I just needed a story to make them care. Her voice was calm, reasonable, as if she were explaining quarterly projections rather than admitting to emotional fraud. I felt bile rise in my throat. So the baby shower, the ultrasound photos, all of it was just marketing. Colette tilted her head, studying me like she used to study algorithms in college, curious, cold, analytical. "Don't be naive. Everything is marketing." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The breeze rattled the windows. Outside, the lake glistened in the sun, so calm. It looked dead. I looked down at the folder in my lap, at all the names of grieving mothers and widows and broken families she'd charmed and harvested like ripe fruit. And suddenly, I felt cold all over, because this wasn't just a lie. This was a strategy, a performance crafted to exploit the darkest corners of human love. And as I looked up at her, my best friend, my almost sister, the girl I once promised to protect forever, I realized with sick certainty she never needed protection. She needed an audience. After the news broke, I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I sat on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the glowing refrigerator light. The house was silent, except for the ticking clock on the wall each second, a reminder that everything had changed. Colette's mugshot was burned into my mind, eyes swollen, hair pulled back harshly, lips pressed into a thin line of defeat. The world saw a liar, a monster, a fraud. But I saw her at 6 years old sitting beside me on the school bus with scraped knees and missing teeth, promising we'd be friends forever. I saw her at 15 crying in my lap after her father left, at 22 laughing as she pinned my veil before I walked down the aisle, at 28 holding my hand in the hospital waiting room when Bennett's car accident nearly took him from me. What do you do when the person who once saved your life becomes the person who poisons it? Bennett found me on the floor at dawn. He crouched down, placing his warm hand over my cold fingers. "She chose this," he whispered. "You didn't." But I didn't know if that was true, because deep down a voice kept whispering back, "You chose her. Over and over again you chose her." Outside, the sun rose burning pink and gold across the horizon. Another day beginning, another day without her, another day knowing that every memory we shared was now laced with rot. And as I sat there in the pale morning light, I realized with bone-deep certainty, some friendships don't end. They haunt. It didn't take long for everything to unravel. The day after I left the cabin, the truth exploded like a grenade in the quiet calm of morning. I woke to the shrill buzz of notifications filling my phone screen, dozens upon dozens of missed calls and unread messages stacking up like accusations. Someone, maybe one of the donors, maybe Alaric himself, maybe even her own mother, had leaked everything to the local press. And there it was, in thick black letters across every headline, "Local nonprofit director fakes pregnancy to solicit donations." Her name screamed in fonts too large to ignore. Her smiling face immortalized mid-laugh at the baby shower, plastered across every news feed, every television screen, every group chat, dissecting the scandal with gleeful horror. The same photo I once thought was beautiful now made my skin crawl. She was radiant in that blush pink dress, hands resting protectively over a belly that never held life, a goddess sculpted from lies and desperation. Bennett found me in the kitchen staring at the article, my coffee turning cold in my trembling hands. "She did this to herself," he said, softly, his voice heavy with finality. But it didn't feel like justice. It felt like watching a building collapse with people still trapped inside their screams, echoing through rubble no one could clear away. My phone buzzed again. Messages flooded in from every corner of my life, friends I hadn't spoken to in years, old classmates, distant cousins who never cared enough to call before. "Did you know? Is it true? How could she do this?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. The words felt like acid burning the back of my throat. By afternoon, Colette was arrested. They took her from her parents' house in the sleepy suburbs, leading her down the driveway in handcuffs. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, her makeup scrubbed away. She looked so small then, so painfully human, ordinary, mortal. No trace of the goddess she'd so carefully crafted for the world to worship. The video of her arrest went viral within minutes. Comment sections boiled with rage and mockery. Psychopath, monster, crazy bitch. Some tried to defend her, whispering about mental illness and childhood trauma. Others called for prison, called for blood, called for her to pay with her life for the betrayal that made them question their own illusions of empathy and goodness. But I couldn't read them for long. It felt like standing among a mob of jeering spectators watching a woman burn at the stake while everyone took turns throwing kindling onto the fire. Because no matter how deep her betrayal cut me, a part of me still remembered her at 6 years old, sitting beside me on the school bus with her lunchbox balanced on her knees, promising with shining eyes that we would be friends forever. The charges came swiftly and brutally. Fraud, emotional exploitation, misappropriation of charitable funds. She took a plea deal to avoid prison probation, community service, mandatory psychiatric treatment, full restitution to every donor she deceived. the foundation was dismantled within days. Its remaining assets were transferred to legitimate maternal health organizations, the only mercy left in her scorched legacy. Her life's work gone ripped away like rotting wallpaper to reveal the black mold crawling beneath. I watched it all from a distance, silent, numb. Some nights I woke gasping for air, drenched in sweat, haunted by dreams of her standing at the foot of my bed. In those dreams, her hair dripped lake water onto the wooden floor, her white dress clinging to her thin frame, and she whispered my name over and over, until I woke up, shaking heart, hammering, like a trapped bird in my ribs. And on the worst nights, I dreamed of her in that pink dress, still smiling, still performing her belly flat and empty beneath the fabric, her eyes glittering with that insatiable hunger that no love, no pity, no devotion could ever fill. This was her ending. A woman devoured by her own lies, standing naked before the world she thought she could control, with charm and tears and carefully orchestrated illusions. And me left behind with nothing but the bitter truth gnawing at my bones. I never truly knew her at all. It's been months since everything ended. I sit in my living room some nights, staring at the memory box on the shelf. Inside are the fragments of 2 decades. A photo of us at 8 years old, gap-toothed and sunburned. Friendship bracelets faded from time and lake water. A yarn thread from the pale blue shawl I lied about to enter her house. And her last letter. Sometimes when the house is silent and Bennett is asleep beside me, I take it out and read it again under the dim kitchen light. Sarah. They tell me writing this is part of recovery, acknowledging the harm I caused, taking responsibility, expressing remorse. But I don't know if this is real remorse or just another performance. I don't know if I know the difference anymore. But I do know this. You saved me, not like a friend saves another gently with love, but like a surgeon saves a dying patient with a blade. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. But you were the only one I couldn't fool completely. Colette. I fold the letter carefully, placing it back into the box, as if returning a dangerous thing to its cage. Because the truth is, I don't know if I've forgiven her. I don't know if I ever will. I walk through my days changed more, cautious, more silent, a little colder around the edges. Friends still ask about her. Sometimes their voice is hushed as if speaking her name might resurrect the monster beneath the girl they once loved. But they never loved her like I did. They didn't see the cracks under her porcelain smile, the way darkness curled around her edges like smoke. They didn't know that even when she was laughing, part of her was always performing. Sometimes I think about what her mother said at the baby shower. After so much silence, this baby is a blessing. Now I wonder what silence she was talking about. What hidden tragedies, what unspoken truths, what parts of Colette's life were built on sand long before this. I want to believe there was a real Colette buried under all the lies. A girl who just wanted to be loved, who once braided my hair with trembling fingers and whispered promises of forever under the yellow glow of fairy lights. But I don't know. I will never know. And maybe that's the most painful part of all grieving someone who isn't dead. Grieving a friendship that never really existed the way I thought it did. Every story needs an ending. But as I sit here staring out into the quiet dark of my living room, I realize some stories don't end. They just become ghosts that haunt every friendship after. 5 months after the trial, a letter arrived for me. It came in a thin, creased, hospital-issued envelope, her handwriting smaller than I remembered, cramped into neat lines like she was trying to take up as little space in the world as possible. I sat at the kitchen table to read it, morning light spilling across the wood grain in golden streaks, illuminating every coffee ring and scratch like old scars. Outside, sparrows argued noisily on the porch railing, but inside the silence pressed around me like a hand on my chest. Sarah. They tell me writing this is part of recovery, that I must learn to tell truth from performance. But I don't know if I can. The lines blur until I don't recognize myself in either one. But I do know, this you saved me. Not the way friends save each other with comforting lies, but the way sisters save each other, with the blade of truth. You cut me open so I couldn't keep rotting from the inside out. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect understanding. But I wanted you to know you were the only person I ever truly believed loved me, even after seeing all that I am. I read it twice, then a third time, letting each word sink into me like a stone thrown into still water, sending ripples through memories I had tried to bury under the routines of daily life. Finally, I folded the letter carefully along its original creases and placed it into the old memory box tucked at the back of my closet. Inside lay fragments of who we used to be, photos of childhood summers by the lake, a friendship bracelet bleached pale by chlorine and sun, and a small piece of pale blue yarn from the shawl I had lied about to enter her house that day. That night, unable to sleep, I drove to the old community hall where her baby shower had been held. The parking lot was empty, cracked asphalt, lit only by the ghostly silver of the moon. The building loomed silent and dark, its windows turned into black mirrors, reflecting back the blurred shape of myself. I sat on the cold concrete steps, arms wrapped around my knees, listening to the wind hiss through the eaves like whispered confessions. The smell of damp wood and distant rain wrapped around me, anchoring me to that silent moment. I thought about her words, about her confusion between truth and performance, about the thin line separating intention from deception, love from hunger reality, from the stories we tell ourselves to survive. I thought about my own complicity, how I let myself believe what was easy, what was beautiful, instead of what was real. How often I saw cracks in her mask, but smoothed them over with excuses and love because the truth would have shattered the illusion I needed just as much as she did. Because that's what friendship is, isn't it? A fragile kingdom built on trust. But sometimes that trust blinds us, makes us complicit in illusions, makes us choose comforting lies over devastating truths. As I sat there in the darkness, staring at my reflection in the glass door, a woman hollowed out by grief and revelation, I whispered into the wind, in friendship. How many times do we choose sweet lies over painful truths? And what does it make us when we finally see the difference and look away anyway? She faked an entire pregnancy for donations, promised grieving families she would name her baby after their dead children, staged a nursery, a baby shower, a perfect life for everyone to admire. But there was never a baby. There was only Colette. And when I walked into her cabin by the lake that morning, I realized this wasn't grief. It was calculation. This wasn't love. It was a performance. Yet what she whispered before I left still haunts me to this day. If I go down, I'm not going alone. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Sometimes what we believe is friendship is just a stage built to keep us clapping. I hope this makes you pause and remember, believe the truth even if it hurts. Because some people don't want your love, they want your belief, and that can cost you everything. Thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end of this story. Sometimes what we believe to be friendship is just a stage. I hope this story makes you look back and choose to believe the truth, no matter how painful it is, because the truth would have shattered the illusion I needed just as much as she did. Because that's what friendship is, isn't it? A fragile kingdom built on trust. But sometimes that trust blinds us, makes us complicit in illusions, makes us choose comforting lies over devastating truths. As I sat there in the darkness, staring at my reflection in the glass door, a woman hollowed out by grief and revelation, I whispered into the wind, in friendship. How many times do we choose sweet lies over painful truths? And what does it make us when we finally see the difference and look away anyway? She faked an entire pregnancy for donations, promised grieving families she would name her baby after their dead children, staged a nursery, a baby shower, a perfect life for everyone to admire. But there was never a baby. There was only Colette. And when I walked into her cabin by the lake that morning, I realized